Hello. Today I'm going to tie for you a Pat Dorsey Midge pattern, but it'll have a bit of a twist. That's how I'm going to finish the thorax, and I'm going to use a Biot for the abdomen. I like that segmented look, and it's a nice way to get that segmentation on these small flies. I'm going to do this one on a size 20, and that's about as small as I think I could manage. It's going to have a shuck made out of this ginger Z-lon. I'm going to mix one Peacock Herl and a small Grizzly Hackle for the thorax. And for the wing, I guess it's an emerging wing because it's formed in the shape of a loop. I'm going to use this gray macrame cord. It may not be as visible as the white, but it may be a little closer to being the color of the actual wing. Like I said, it's going to have a goose by it, and we're going to hold it all together with uni-thread A-dot in black. So I've got my hook in the vise. We'll get the threads started. I left a little room there to remind me not to crowd the eye of the hook, but as you'll see when I get to the end, and on these small hooks, which sometimes happen, I did crowd the eye. So that said, let's move along here. So there's only a few strands. That might be about 12 strands, 10 to 12 strands of that ginger Z-lon. And I'm going to start it at about the hook point, work my way back around the bend a little bit to where I think the abdomen should end. And I left it about the shank of the hook, well, a little longer, probably the entire hook length. And we'll trim that to where the thorax will begin, wrap over it and come back and get ready to tie in my biot. So this is a goose biot, and I bend it over the hook. There, you can use whatever method you want to see which side and where you want the smooth side versus when you flip it and do segmentation. I want this to be smooth, so I bend it over the hook to see which side is going to be smooth, and I tie it in, and I'm counting on when I take that first wrap, making a quarter turn. And that gets a little fiddly here, you'll see that. So we'll get a half hitch on it and put the thread in the bobbin cradle. I'm going to use the rotary feature. So here I'll get a hold of it with hackle pliers. You can see the notches at the bottom. That's how some folks kind of remember where the smooth side will be. And I want to wrap this over a little head cement. That's actually Sally Hansen's. And you could coat it on the outside if you wanted. It adds to the time you have to wait for it to dry. So like I said, this was a little fiddly. You'll see me kind of fumble this. It starts to wrap the wrong way. I'm not liking it. I have to go back and kind of give that hackle plier a quarter turn the other way. And you got to be careful. These are actually pretty tough. Some of them you get are goose bites are pretty brittle, but these guys are pretty tough. This came from an actual goose, and I don't want to keep bragging about it. My son-in-law shot it last year, so. And here we are working our way forward, getting that nice segmented look. And these biots get pretty wide pretty quick, so we're going to stop there and throw the thread over the top. Of course, it slides back around the bend, but we'll adjust. Get it held down behind the biot and a couple of wraps to hold it in place. And I'm folding it there to make sure I have that first thread wrap out of the way so I don't snip the thread when I trim the excess biot away. And a couple of wraps to smooth things up, and I'm going to come to the back toward the middle of this fly a little bit. And here's that loop of the gray macrame cord. Again, not very many fibers. The problem with midges is trying to put too much material on these small flies and small hooks. So I kind of did a form of a pinch wrap there to get things back and in place. And we'll just pull that loop down to where it looks right to me. It's actually a little shorter than the abdomen when I'm all said and done. And a nice tight wrap or two to hold it in place. You'll see that one strand's got a little longer loop, and I'm going to take care of that at the end. So I like the looks of that. I'm going to tie in my hackle first. And it's essentially about the shank length, or 1.5 times the gap of the hook. These little hooks have a pretty wide gap, so that's one of the challenges of measuring using the hook. So there's an element of what looks right when you're all said and done. So here I've got the Peacock curl and the hackle in place, and I want to twist these together. And I've done these with just my fingers, and something usually slips. And so what I've been doing is just grabbing them with the smallest, lightest pair of hackle pliers I have. I'll back out and I'll show you. And I just flop those around over the thread. And it's about here I realized that I've got enough. That's way too long. That's way more than I need for this fly. So I backed out and shortened that up, and you can see we're just twisting. The bobbin's hanging below, and I'm going to do a few twists. So it's a little fiddly. There's probably a better way to do it. I didn't want to double up on the thread. We don't want to build any bulk into this either. And I don't think it matters which way you twist this, because I'm going to use the rotary feature of the vise. I think if you're twisting by hand, there's a tendency, and especially when you're only doing a twist, a wrap or two, but there's a tendency to either keep twisting or untwist what you just did. So, but the rotary feature kind of, I think it nullifies any thoughts of which direction. So now I'm just kind of picking where to stop. So I want it to end, and since it's twisted around the thread, it doesn't really jump loose. I'll come up and sneak a thread wrap or two in behind the eye of the hook. I have to fight my materials a little bit there, but so 2 wraps ought to be enough. Again, that was all twisted around the thread, so it's pretty much held in place. We'll trim off the excess. And I like where everything is. There are a couple of hackle fibers that are headed in the wrong direction here, so we'll take care of them too. So the first thing to do, though, is to kind of get this tied off, I think. So we're going to zoom in and give you a better look again. And I'm going to wet my fingers and pull everything back out of the way. And if you get a couple of wraps under that, the stub ends of the gray macrame cord fibers, that'll kind of kick them up, and that's what we want. We want to keep the eye clear. And since there's so much sticking out in all directions, I'm going to use half hitches to finish this fly, and that'll keep me from trapping down fibers any worse than I already have. So I've got a single and a double on there, and I'm going to count on my head cement to keep that in place. And I'm going to stop there. Again, I crowded the eye a little bit, so I don't want to really load up on the half hitches or the whip finish. So get the thread out of the way. Trim that macrame cord to length. And now we can go after those fibers. You wouldn't have to. I guess they could look like antenna or anything else, but I'm going to trim some of those fibers that were kicked forward. So we got that one on the bottom. We have a couple on the side here that are just unnecessary and not where we need them to be. So we'll sneak in and make sure we only get those. And that's where I took care of that one strand that made a little longer loop. That was bothering me, and it wouldn't have mattered one bit, but now it's gone. And here I'm going to take off a couple of strands of that shuck just to make it have a little shape to it and not look so chopped off. And a little dab of Sally Hansen's for head cement, nice and tight in against that half hitch. Make sure my eye's clear. And it's ready to fish. So this time of year, it's hoppers and whatever hatches are remaining. They've seen everything in terms of bugs by now, but sometimes smaller is better. And it may be time to double up and do a dry, and have this as your dropper with something a little bigger that you can see. So hope this helps you out. And if you want to learn more about me, look me up on Amazon. And until next time, be safe.